I pause to give thanks again, not only for the work of God, but for the way that individuals are stepping in, being called and responding to that call, to lend their voices and their talents to the organization and the facilitation of worship for us. People whose voices we might be experiencing and people whose work we see, but we never actually know that they're behind it unless we are watching the credits in some way, shape, or form. So I want to give thanks again for all those who come together to make worship possible in this way, in this format, in whatever time and place we are gathered. We continue in our worship series, this Joy Changes Joy series. We're at the middle point of it. We have reached halfway, so to speak, or at least we will halfway through this sermon. Joy changes joy. We continue in Philippians, and you have already experienced the Philippians 2 text, the hymn that is within it, and this call that Paul gives to the people of faith in Philippi. If there is any encouragement in Christ, any consolation from love, any sharing in the Spirit, any compassion and sympathy, make my joy complete. Be of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Paul isn't talking for uniformity, by the way. He's not calling for us to be exactly the same, dressing the same, eating the same, living the same, loving the exact same way. He's not calling for that, but he is calling for us to be grounded. In other parts of Scripture, Paul talks about his credentials in his letters, the things that in our society we do find joy in. We find a sense of celebration in the credentials, the things that we can outline and say, this is important in my life. And they are important in our lives. They are milestones. Think about when we first meet someone and we ask them to tell their story, or they ask for ours, the things that we choose to say, the points in life that we hold up as being markers for us. Some of those are things that are traumatic, but a lot of those, I would go out a limb to guess that they are things that we rejoice in some way, shape, or form. We rejoiced in the moment, or maybe we have found joy in them later on. Some of them are credentials. I went to Hiram College, a fine disciples institution. And then I went to Old Dominion University, another fine institution of higher learning. And then I went to Christian Theological Seminary, another fine disciples institution. And now I am enrolled in courses at Phillips Theological Seminary, yet another fine disciples institution. And by the way, don't judge disciples' institutions by the qualities of me, especially my grammar. Paul, in other parts of Scripture, outlines his credentials. He says, these are things that I can be proud of. I might find some joy in. I can find some joy in my heritage, right? We should have some joy in who we are. No matter what we know of our history, we should be able to find places where we can rejoice in it. Paul says I can find some heritage or some joy, not just in my heritage, but in my current cultural setting. He is a Roman citizen, and there is something to be proud of in his citizenship. There are things within citizenship that we have that we should be proud of. We should rejoice in. Paul says, I've been educated as a Pharisee in other parts of Scripture. And he says, you know, this is something that I am proud of and I can rejoice in. I have joy in these things. But then he goes on to say, when I encountered Christ, all of those other things lost some of their shine. Perhaps when he encountered Christ crucified and risen, perhaps he started looking at his heritage and started seeing some of the less beautiful parts of it, the more troubling parts. Maybe he started seeing some of the systemic issues. Maybe when he encountered Christ crucified and risen, he started looking at his citizenship and the things that he had glossed over before. came to the forefront. Maybe when he encountered Christ crucified and risen, all of that theological education, that grounding he had, it didn't go away, it didn't lose its value, but he began to experience and interpret it a little bit differently. Now, the temptation would be to take the whole thing and toss it out. It's bad, therefore I want to get rid of it. Instead of going, there's joy in this, but it's not perfect joy. It's not the ideal joy. It's not the joy of God fully revealed. So Paul could have rejected everything that made him Paul, which would include rejecting God, by the way. But instead, he is transformed by Christ crucified and risen. And so he experiences that joy differently. Those things that he celebrated and rejoiced in before are changed by the joy of Christ in his life. And that's where we are on this day, in this moment. Paul is beseeching the people of faith in Philippi, and since we are still reading these letters and the words are being lifted up, animated, and brought to life again in our midst, Paul is reaching out to us. Not to reject the things we have rejoiced in before, the things of our heritage, the things of our citizenship, the things of our faith. Our institutions, broken as they all may be, don't reject them. Acknowledge the brokenness and allow your joy to be changed by the encounter of God revealed in Christ crucified and risen. This is where Paul is driving us. This is how joy changes joy. Because the ultimate joy of the relationship we have with God is one that changes our relationship with the other things that we have celebrated. Maybe we believed that wealth, the accumulation of power, now it certainly is handy, and I'm not talking about rejecting these things, but we need to have a healthy relationship with it. All the letters that might be accumulating after my name, I can take pride and rejoice in those things, but I need to have a healthy relationship with it. Some would say my relationship with perpetual studenthood is a little unhealthy, and they might be right. But if I am allowing the encounter of God through Christ to be the lens that I view all of this through, then I can still rejoice, but my joy is changed because it is grounded in God in an amazing and powerful way. This is what Paul is getting at when he is encouraging the Philippians to make his joy complete. That completeness, that perfection, that use of the language is only achievable in and through God. The Wesleyans have this great image, the Methodists, this ever onward toward perfection. It's a sort of an upward corkscrew motion. It acknowledges that we as human beings tend to wander all over creation, but it is also an acknowledgement that our joy in God, our draw to God, is bringing us ever closer toward that perfection. Paul wants the people of Philippi, not the persons, the people, the community that we find joy in this season, whatever that season may be for us, to experience how joy in the relationship with God changes the joy we have in this world. Now, we might not always be rejoicing. There could be things going on in this world that we are finding quite chaotic and upending. The season we are in might be a season that is actually quite unpleasant, and we don't want to set the clock back an hour because we don't want another hour of this. We want to just steam ahead and get through it. I'm not saying a relationship with God is going to make all of the anxiety go away. It's not going to erase, but the lens that we view the world through, just as our joy will be changed by joy, our anxieties, our dis-ease will be changed as well. So we will have a healthier relationship with the things that we rejoice in, and we will have a better grounding. Not that all that troubles us will magically disappear, but that the things that trouble us might be brought into a perspective, a different perspective. And perhaps we will be able to rejoice in that as well. That's what Paul is calling us towards in this relationship. That's what Paul is inviting us to do. That is our invitation on this day as a people of faith, as a community, to allow our joy that we have already, the pride that we have, the feelings we have, the strong connections we have to things like our heritage or history, or our citizenship and our culture, or our faith in the institutions of faith, to be transformed and changed by the joy of that grounding in a relationship with God as revealed by Jesus the Christ crucified and risen. It will change our perspective, the perspective we have on our lives and the perspective we have on this world. Joy will change joy. Some of the things that have been shiny will become tarnished to us. And some of the things that have been overlooked will suddenly pop forth brilliantly, grabbing our attention. And this is good news. To be reoriented is good news. To be changed and transformed is good news. Just as crucifixion yielding to resurrection is good news. Allow the relationship with God to change your joy, that it may be complete, that we may be the best church we can be on this day. Thanks be to God. And amen.